Hi there, I'm Ian Willoughby, and I'm delighted you could join me for episode 6 of Czech Next Wave, a podcast produced jointly by the Czech Centres Network and Radio Prague International. The focus of the podcast is talented young Czechs in the arts and beyond, and few in that category can have made such career strides in recent years as the photographer Maria Tomanová. What's more, Maria has found success at international level, notching up one triumph after the other in her adopted home of New York. And that's where I caught up with her for this edition of Czech Next Wave. When did you first start taking photos where you thought, these are good, I can do this?
Well, I think I started to take photos just to kind of keep preoccupied and do something creative. And I didn't think that they were good at the beginning at all, for actually quite a long time. Yeah, I think it took a while before I was thinking like, all right, this is something that could work and there's a direction that I'm going. I actually started taking pictures in 2014 or so, 2013. Actually, I was taking pictures much sooner than that, but I just didn't consider them being photographs to be shown or as a medium because I was studying painting in Czech Republic. But I was actually taking so many photographs before I even, considered my medium from 2005 till 2010. As soon as I get my hands on the cell phone that had a camera, I was basically taking pictures every day for years. And looking back at those pictures with the perspective of doing photography as a serious medium these days, I was really amazed. I was like, wow, there's so many of these raw pictures. I mean, these days you take so many pictures on your phone to look fabulous, to look amazing, to put it on your social media, all of that kind of fake feeling pictures because they're just, too perfect in a way, building your identity in a certain way. But back then I was taking pictures on cell phone, just capturing what was happening. My friend with his bleeding head because he fell, he jumped. We did like skinny dipping, diving in this quarry at 2 a.m, and he jumped in the water. It was too shallow, and then all of a sudden we're all party's over. Everybody's in the emergency ambulance going to hospital, and he's bleeding from his head, and I'm sitting there with him taking pictures, which but I couldn't not take a picture. And it was all these moments of us being young, just living. And that's great about those pictures. And I think in that way, there's a really special something in them for me.
Some of your photos, you had a series where you placed your own naked body in the context of the American wilderness, lying on moss-covered trees and so on. What was the idea behind those images?
It was just a really strong craving of homeland. And at that time, I already lived in New York City, which for me is just a crazy concrete jungle. But, I love it here. But I also missed nature and landscape. And being from a small town called Mikulov, I spent most of my childhood in vineyards because we do make wine at my home, and we have, like tree gardens and vegetable gardens, and we always spend time in the nature after school. So all of a sudden, I found myself in the middle of the city and felt like I need to escape and do these trips. And I started to arrange trips to countryside, and lots of it was on the East Coast, a lot of it was on the West Coast. For me, American landscape is fascinating also for the reason that it is very different than what I'm used to from Czech Republic. For example, on the West Coast in Oregon, I don't know if you've ever been, but it's so much moss, like so many types of moss. And it's just fluffy and tall and deep, and everything is green and huge trees. And for me, that was an amazing experience of putting my body into it and see how I can belong into the landscape that's so new and foreign to me and kind of becoming, in vibe with it.
Maria, you often have appeared naked in your own photos. You seem unusually relaxed about your own body. Where does that confidence come from?
I don't know. I think I just never really got in the spot where I was not feeling good about my body. I think, was kind of blessed in the way that I never thought that, the way you look is what really determines who you are. I think it really comes from within and not from the outside. So for me, the priority always used to be to be happy, to be who you are, trying to figure out who you are. I remember being a teenager and really struggling with not knowing what I want from life, or where should I go with life, or what's the mission of my life, and that has been in multiple times throughout my life a thing that definitely, struck me and bothered me. And it has never really been connected to how I look. It's always been about what is the life about and what should we do here. So I just think it's just never been a priority. I also grew up in a very free feeling family with loving parents and sisters, and we always kind of, jumped nude in the pond after we worked at the field. And there was just never really like stigma around nudity. So I think that plays into it as well, probably.
You're just very lucky you're not Irish. That's all I can say. Obviously, you're in New York. How hard was it for you to get established in photography in the city, which must be so competitive?
Oh my God, these days everybody is a photographer, believe me. It's not very easy, but it's been persistent work. When I think about it these days, it's been years since I started photography and started to do exhibitions here in US, from group shows slowly to solo shows. I mean, my first solo show was only 2 years ago, which seems to me like 10 years ago. It's been only 2. And since then, we've done more than 10 another solo shows all over the world, which is amazing to see things like that happen. But it's a lot about persistent work and just never giving up. It's a lot of small steps and it takes years. And, the world doesn't change after one interview or solo show. It's just, I think, what I learned in all of this is it's not about the end of the journey, it's about the journey itself and enjoying being on it. And I kind of never really want the journey to stop by now. I just kind of like the process of going forward. There's always up and downs, but that's actually the fun part of it too, kind of going over the obstacles and challenges and just making things work.
Your husband, Thomas Beachdale, is a curator. How important has he been in your career?
He's actually, I think, he would, I guess, identify more as an art historian rather than a curator, though he does curate quite a lot, especially with me. He has been really the first supporter of my photography, which definitely was very important and got me into this place now. The first time I started taking pictures in New York, we are really talking 2013 or 14, I was taking pictures with digital camera, and I was just taking hundreds and hundreds of pictures, and I really didn't know which way to go with it. And he would always, I would make these 4x6 little prints, and we would meet in a coffee shop, and he would just patiently go over like 800 pictures and put aside the 25 that were like, good. I was like, oh, and why these? I mean, tell me why this and not that. And it's been since a process of discussing work, discussing pictures, and I can tell I really learned a lot from that. And by now, I am more confident with doing my own edits, but at the beginning, that just was something that was essential to my work and keeping taking photographs. And really, he was the first supporter of my work, which meant a lot.
Probably your biggest success to date has been with the series of portraits and later book, Young American. Many of the subjects in the photos are quite androgynous looking. Obviously, identity is a big issue in the States these days. How much do you feel you've benefited from the fact that you're doing this kind of work at this particular cultural moment?
I think that, American youth has always been captivating. And I think it's just youth all over the world. I just got back from Berlin. And I can tell you, I've never seen more girls with shaved head as in Berlin. I was like, wow, this is awesome. I think that the androgynous look is something that I relate to very much. And of course, I somehow pick people that I photographed the way how I really relate to them, in a very subconscious way, I would think. I guess I'm really just captivated by people being who they want to be, and lots of these kids that I'm photographing, they're in their early 20s. Sometimes, actually, through the pandemic, what was amazing to see in New York City is that there were not really any international students, not many, tourists. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, a whole new generation of young kids popped up, and it's all of these kids who are 16, 15, and they're not at school. And they're just hanging in the park every afternoon because they have school online, so they can actually be in the park most of the time. And they're all really inspiring, and there's all these concerts happening in the park with social distancing, just playing outside, and they all dance, and it's amazing to see that. And they're just being who they want to be. And for me, it's amazing to watch, because when I was their age, I remember how much I struggled with trying to figure out who I am. It's the same question over and over, who you are, where you're going. And I guess that's what really captivating for me in the young generation, and the fact that we all can relate to it in some way or other, because we all used to be that young and in that age. And I think it's a very special time for, one's identity.
In the introduction to the book, Young American, the photographer Ryan McGinley says that your Czechness is your superpower. What did he mean by that, or what does he mean by that?
I think it's really great. He really nailed it in a way that if I meet with these young kids, in the park, and I'm like, hey, hi, can I take a picture of you? And we start talking, and I ask, where are they from? And they ask me. I say Czech Republic, and they're like, wow, where is that? What does it look like? They don't have a set idea of it these days, which is actually great, because, there's no prejudice in it, and they're just interested and excited, and it really works great in that way.
Is there anything that you feel that's specifically Czech about your work?
That's a difficult question. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't think so. At least I don't see it. I did see it in the pictures from Mikulov, because obviously it's a Czech environment, but if I see your other work that I've seen, I would say no. But you might have a different perspective.
I will always be very Czech in many ways. And I think what photography really did for me, and life in New York probably as well, is becoming better self, in a sense that I think how Czechness shows a lot, especially in me, is being shy, not wanting to ask for things, feeling like I bother people, and trying to be, quiet and polite and not ask for anything. And that has been something that I managed to change and overcome in New York City, because if you don't ask for things, you're not gonna get them. That's just the way it is. So I think that aspect of the Czech upbringing has been very challenging for me, and something that I worked on a lot. And I think it in certain ways shows in the photos, the way that me photographing other people, especially in the beginning, has been a big challenge for me to even ask them to pose for my camera, because I just always felt like, why would they want to do it? It's in one's head, and one needs to overcome that and just challenge oneself to do things that you want to do and not be scared to ask for them. And people always say yes or no. There's nothing else, so they say either yes or no, no big deal, and move on.
And when you go home to the Czech Republic, do you feel different from the local people?
That was, I think, the biggest confusion when I came back in 2018, is the fact that everything looked the same, especially in my small town in Mikulov. There's still the same trees in the same place. As I walked through the park every day to school for 8 years, it's like I even, for lots of my of the photographs that I took, I put on my old clothing that I used to wear so much, because it's still there. So I was really kind of the same, except hair, in the same space, but feeling very different.
We first met about 2 years ago in New York, and since then I've really enjoyed following your career and watching you become increasingly successful. From the outside, it looks like you're doing so many cool things, but what for you have been the moments where you've kind of pinched yourself and thought, is this really happening?
Yeah. It's been a long journey. There's a lot of amazing projects coming up next year, which I'm very excited about, and I think it's that makes me feel like it's really finally happening. But yeah, the great news is that the second book is coming out, which I'm very excited about. That's what has been occupying me for the past weeks. It's something that will be very exciting. It's coming out with a German publisher called Hajakans. They do amazing art books. And yeah, I hope I will see everybody in Czech at the book launch in the summer. If, everything goes with the pandemic as we hope it will, that should be something that's going to be happening.
And what is the book? What's the focus?
It's going to be, again, portraits. It's going to be a newer work of young American. It's going to be called differently, and it's just going to be bigger and better portraits like young American book.
I have to ask you about photographing Kim Gordon, who has been a heroine of mine for decades. If people don't know her, she was in Sonic Youth, and she's this icon of rock music and also fashion. What was it like photographing her?
She's such a sweet lady. Yeah, it was really great. We met in LA. She walked in. She's actually pretty petite lady, which you just can never tell from pictures, right? She walked in with her guitar, and yeah, she was amazing. Just down to earth, very nice lady. We talked a lot. We talked about how it was living in New York back then, and they lived on Lower East Side, and we talked about how New York's changed since. She's amazing. We had a great story together afterwards because her tour was just going on, and I think she had a new thing out. She was doing lots of interviews and shoots every day. So, and she also had a concert that night that she invited me to, which was in a gallery in LA. So I went. It was her new experimental music. It was really bold. Her music is like bold. I have to say the gallery was packed, and half of them left before the end of the concert. Like they couldn't take it. But together with the projection, it was amazing. But then I hang out with her after the concert, and there was actually a very strange thing happened. She walked into a glass accidentally, a glass wall that she didn't see. I was a little bit behind her, and I didn't see what happened. All of a sudden, I just walked in, and there was blood all over the floor and drops. And I was like, what's going on? And everybody was running around, and I followed them, and I see Kim sitting on a toilet, like surrounded by paper towels all over her face and everything, and people standing around her, and she was bleeding from her nose and lip because she just walked into the wall. So actually, I then ended up sitting with her. She was laying on a sofa with ice on her forehead, and I was sitting next to her for 2 hours, and we were just chatting, and she was relaxing and talking about how she has a big shoot the next morning, and she already started to have like a black eye and big swollen lips. I was like, that's gonna be really awesome. So yeah, we had a great little story together, and we've been friends since, which is great. I have some photographs in her book that just came out. It's called Kim Gordon, No Icon. It's amazing. I love it. It's a lot of old photos, recent photos. It's like a, visual diary of her life, and her art is in it too. So yeah, she's been great.
I noticed, Maria, that you've been doing some shoots for fashion brands and magazines. Is that an area that attracts you a lot?
Yeah, it is actually, and it's been really fun to do, especially lately. I've been getting some really fun projects going on. What I love about the fashion shoots is that people usually come to me and they're like, all right, we love how you do Young American and all of these photographs. We want you to translate it into fashion, which for me is super fun project because it's not like they want me to studio with lighting and stuff. So yeah, it's been great. I just shot a campaign for Gucci, which has been amazing. Definitely a dream of mine for a while. And all of a sudden I got an email from them. I'm like, oh yes, I'm in. So yeah, that just came out 2 weeks ago. So that's been really, really great. Yeah.
I've also seen that you yourself have a fashion line, or at least a line of t-shirts that were on sale in Japan. How common is that for photographers to have their own line of clothing?
I think people like to do that. Brands like to do that. I don't know how often it is a full collection. Usually it's just like a, artist t-shirt. Yeah, it's been great. I was able to shoot a campaign for it too. And they did amazing install in the store with like a huge photo printed. It was pretty awesome. It was exclusively for Japan. So, and they have like, I don't know, 15 or so store locations. So it was, it was actually an amazing experience. They put my signature all over the sleeves and my name. So I was on a call with my mom. I was like, and my mom, because my mom has the same name. We are both Marie Tomanová. So I was like, Mom, you have shirts in Japan and sweatshirts that have your name all over it.
You're very active on Instagram. How important is social media to what you do and to building a profile?
Instagram is something that I think is important nowadays, and especially for photographers. It's not really what I, like to do very much. It's sometimes kind of, exhausting. I'm not really as good with it as I would like to be, I think. I would like to post more often. It's just I never really find the time for it. Also, I always kind of prefer to show the pictures in an exhibition or a book or some other space than just, a little square on Instagram. But I guess it's the way how one can get it out, especially these days, and show it to people. So I don't know. Instagram is great. It's definitely an amazing tool how to connect with people. And even magazines. I actually do get quite a few jobs offers through Instagram as well. So it's like your new email.
When we first met in 2018, the filmmaker Maria Dvořáková was making a documentary about you and your rise. What became of that project?
First of all, I want to say hi to Maruška. I miss her so much. We actually met briefly when I was traveling from Berlin. She's doing amazing. She's still working on that project. We have some very exciting big news regarding to that, which I can't say yet, but definitely stay tuned. It's gonna be pretty awesome.
And looking to the future, Maria, where would you like your career to be in, let's say, 5-10 years?
Bigger shows, bigger shoots for, fashion. And that's about it. I just want to be able to keep taking pictures, getting paid for it appropriately so I can do just that, and traveling, and kind of that's it. I mean, some, kind of where I am, just a little bigger and better.
I spoke to Maria Tomanová remotely in December 2020 for this edition of Czech Next Wave. The podcast series is produced jointly by the Czech Centres Network and Radio Prague International. And our theme music is the work of another mega-talented young Czech, organist supreme Ondřej Pivec. If you've enjoyed this edition of Czech Next Wave, why not check out our earlier ones? And of course, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. I'll be back with another episode in a few weeks' time, but for now, that's all from me, Ian Willoughby, here in Prague.